Her tires tore through my field again, kicking up dirt and flattening the sprouts I'd spent months tending. The roar of her engine echoed across the quiet morning, a sound that had started to haunt me every weekend. I stood there, shovel in hand, frozen between fury and disbelief as Karen, the self-appointed HOA president of our tiny rural lane, sped through my property like she owned it. The smell of mud and exhaust hung thick in the air, and all I could think about was how many times I'd warned her. How many times I'd asked her, politely at first, then firmly, to stay off my crops. But she always found a reason. "It's just a shortcut," she'd say, smirking from behind her tinted sunglasses. "Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from, because trust me, you're going to want to see how this one ends." That morning, I could feel something in me snap. I'd tried to reason with her. I'd even called the HOA board, but they all shrugged it off. "Karen handles the neighborhood affairs," they told me, as if that gave her the right to bulldoze my hard work. She wasn't even supposed to be driving there. It was private property, fenced, with clear signs posted. But every time she wanted to check on my land, she'd ram the gate open with her car like it was her personal driveway. My fields were my pride. Rows of green stalks, neatly aligned, the kind of work that made my late father proud. Watching her tear through them felt like watching someone vandalize his memory. One evening, I decided to stand by the gate, waiting. I wanted to catch her in the act, maybe get her license plate, maybe confront her once and for all. I heard the faint growl of an engine before I saw her headlights curve around the bend. My heart pounded as I stepped forward, camera ready in my pocket. She didn't slow down. She didn't even pretend to. Mud splashed up onto my jeans as she rolled past me, tires slicing through the soil like a knife through bread. I yelled after her, my voice echoing into the night, but she only stuck her hand out the window and flipped me off before vanishing down the trail. That was the moment I decided, enough was enough. The next day, I went to the HOA meeting. Karen sat at the head of the table, tapping her nails like a judge waiting to deliver a sentence. "You again," she sighed. "If this is about your so-called crops, maybe you should plant somewhere else." The others snickered. My jaw clenched so tight I could feel my teeth ache. "This is my land, Karen. You don't have permission to drive through it." She leaned back, smirking. "Actually, according to the HOA map, that's a shared access route. You might want to brush up on your bylaws." The arrogance in her tone burned through me. I knew she was lying. The land registry was clear. But Karen had a way of twisting people's words, of making herself sound right even when she was dead wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared out my window, watching the moonlight glint off the wet soil she'd ruined. My hands itched for action. I wasn't going to fight her in meetings anymore. No, I'd fight her where she least expected, right on the ground she thought she owned. I spent the next few days studying the terrain, every rut and dip she'd left behind. There was a soft patch near the far fence, a spot where rainwater always pooled. That's where I got my idea. I'd dig deep. Not enough to trap anyone permanently, but enough to make a point. Enough to stop her once and for all. When the skies opened up 2 days later, it was perfect. The ground softened under the rain, turning slick and heavy. I worked through the drizzle, shovel biting into the earth, my boots sinking with each step. Every scoop of mud felt like justice in my hands. The rain masked the sound of digging, and by the time I was done, there was a deep, wide patch of wet soil that looked just like every other part of the field, except it wasn't. It was waiting. I covered it carefully, laid a thin layer of dry dirt, then stepped back and admired my work. The mud trap was ready. And soon enough, so was Karen. It didn't take long. The next morning, the sky cleared, and I knew she'd come. Karen loved showing off her shiny SUV when the sun was out, windows down, music blaring like she was queen of the neighborhood. I stood behind the barn, heart hammering, watching the dust rise in the distance. The moment I saw that silver hood glinting in the light, I knew she was headed straight for me, straight for the trap. I felt a chill crawl down my back, half guilt, half anticipation. I wasn't out to hurt her, just to make her stop. To make her see. Her car rolled closer, the engine humming smugly through the open fields. She didn't notice me at first. She never did. She just aimed her car toward the usual route, the same one she'd carved by force over the months. The tires hit the patch, and for a second, everything went silent. Then came the sound, a deep, wet squelch followed by a jarring thud. Her SUV sank halfway into the ground, mud spraying up against the windows. The front tires spun helplessly, throwing clumps of dirt into the air. I stepped forward, barely able to hide the satisfaction curling at the corners of my mouth. Karen's door flew open, and she jumped out, shrieking, "What the hell did you do to my car?" Her voice cut through the quiet field like a siren. I walked toward her slowly, shovel in hand, pretending to be calm even though my pulse was racing. "It's not my fault you can't read signs, Karen. That's private property." She glared at me, mud splattering her heels as she tried to pull one foot free. "You sabotaged this. You're going to jail for this, you psycho." Her face was flushed red with fury, eyes wide like she couldn't believe someone had dared to fight back. The neighbors started to gather along the fence line, drawn by her shouting. I heard murmurs. Someone whispered, "Looks like Karen's finally getting what she deserves." Another laughed softly. She spun around, pointing at them like a teacher scolding children. "You all saw that. He's crazy. He did this on purpose." Her voice cracked, desperation creeping in. I shrugged. Funny how it's only a problem when you're the one stuck. The mud clung to her tires, pulling the car deeper the more she tried to rev it. The smell of burning rubber filled the air. I could see the panic setting in. Her phone was covered in mud, her car alarm kept blaring, and the neighbors were recording everything. "You can't post this," she screamed at them, wiping mud from her face. "This is defamation." One man shouted back, "Tell that to the crops you ran over." The crowd laughed, and I'll admit, a small part of me enjoyed it. Karen, the woman who had humiliated me at every HOA meeting, now floundered knee-deep in the mess she'd made herself. Then she tried to change tactics. Her voice softened suddenly. "Listen, maybe we can work something out. I didn't mean to ruin your crops. You know, I just got lost that first time, and it became a habit." I tilted my head. "A habit? You've cost me hundreds of dollars, Karen." She glanced around nervously as the crowd kept filming. "Let's talk inside," she whispered. "No need for all these people to see this." But I wasn't buying it. "No, I think they should see exactly what happens when someone abuses their power." Her composure cracked. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I am the HOA president." The way she said it made me laugh. "Funny you mentioned that," I said quietly. "Because I did a little digging of my own, and it turns out you're not." Her face froze, confusion flashing into fear. The murmurs grew louder around us. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my phone. On the screen was a document from the county clerk's office, proof that the HOA presidency had expired 6 months ago. Karen had been lying. Every order she'd given, every threat, every fine, all fake. Her eyes darted between me and the phone, realizing her empire of control was about to collapse. The crowd erupted. Someone shouted, "You mean she's not even legit?" Another yelled, "All those fines were fake?" Karen's face went pale. She stumbled backward, one heel slipping deep into the mud. For a moment, she looked small, terrified, cornered. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But I didn't move to help. Not yet. The trap wasn't just in the ground anymore. It was around her lies, closing in fast. Karen stood there, trembling, mud dripping down her legs like the earth itself was reclaiming her. The neighbors' phones were out, flashes of light catching her face as she tried to hide it with her hands. "Stop recording," she shouted, her voice breaking between rage and humiliation. "You don't understand. I was just keeping things organized." I took a slow step forward, boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. "Organized," I said quietly. "You destroyed my crops. You lied to the HOA. You harassed half the neighborhood. That's not organization, Karen, that's control." She looked at me like she wanted to say something clever, but her words caught in her throat. The air smelled of rain and diesel, thick and heavy. The only sound was the distant clicking of phone cameras and the weak hum of her stalled SUV. I could see her mind racing, trying to find a way out, not of the mud, but of the truth. She had spent years bullying people, waving around fake titles, and now she was cornered by her own arrogance. For once, there was no meeting she could manipulate, no email she could twist. Just her, me, and the cold, wet reality of what she'd done. "I'll sue you," she said finally, trying to straighten her spine. Mud splattered across her white blazer as she did. "You've damaged my car and my reputation." Her voice wavered on the last word. I crossed my arms. "You did that yourself." I pointed toward the onlookers. "They've got the whole thing on video. You trespassed. You ignored posted signs. You impersonated an HOA official. You can try suing, but you'll be lucky if you're not the one facing charges." She froze, the threat landing harder than I expected. For a long second, she just stared at me, lips pressed tight. Then she snapped. "This is harassment," she screamed, trying to wade back toward her car. The crowd booed. "Get off his land," someone shouted. Another voice added, "Call the cops on her." That one made her stop. She turned back, eyes wide. "Wait. No, we can settle this." Her tone shifted again, desperate, almost pleading. But I was done negotiating. I pulled out my phone and dialed the sheriff's office. As soon as I said her name, the deputy on the line sighed. "Karen Dillard? Again." That told me everything I needed to know. When the patrol truck finally pulled up, the look on her face was priceless. The deputy stepped out, tipped his hat, and looked between us. "We got a report of trespassing," he said, eyes landing on the SUV half buried in the mud. "Karen tried to play innocent. He trapped me here. Look what he did," she cried, pointing dramatically at the ground. The deputy walked over, crouched, and poked the soil with his boot. "Looks like you drove through a posted field, ma'am," he said dryly. "We've warned you before about staying off private property." Her voice broke. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president." The deputy straightened, unimpressed. "Ma'am, that position doesn't exist anymore. The HOA was dissolved last spring. You've been told that in writing." The crowd gasped. Some even started clapping. Karen's face went blank. She had nowhere left to hide. "You can't. You don't understand. I was just trying to keep order," she muttered weakly. The deputy sighed. "Well, now you're under investigation for impersonation and property damage. Step aside, ma'am." The scene felt surreal. Watching her climb out of that pit, shoes squelching, her once pristine outfit ruined, it was like watching her pride sink with her car. I should have felt victorious, but what I felt was quieter than that. It was closure. Months of frustration, humiliation, and helplessness finally lifted off my shoulders. She was led toward the patrol car, muttering about lawyers and conspiracies, but no one paid her any mind. The deputy gave me a nod. "We'll file the report and send you a copy. Might take a few days." I thanked him quietly. The neighbors stayed long after she was gone, talking among themselves, replaying the videos, some even apologizing for not believing me sooner. "You were right all along," one woman said. "We all thought she had some kind of authority." I smiled faintly. So did she. When the last of them left, I stood alone by the field, the muddy wreck of her SUV still half buried as the sun began to set. The light hit the soil just right, catching the damp sheen of the earth, the same ground my father once taught me to protect. And in that moment, it felt like I finally had. A few days later, the deputy called back. Karen had been fined heavily for trespassing and fraud. She'd also been ordered to pay restitution for the crop damage. Word spread fast, and no one ever saw her drive near my property again. Her house went up for sale a few weeks later. Some said she moved to another county. I didn't care where she went, as long as she stayed far from here. The land was quiet again, the way it used to be. Sometimes, when I walk past that old patch of dirt, I still see the faint outline where her tires sank deep. It's a reminder, not of revenge, but of standing up for what's yours when no one else will. Because people like Karen only stop when someone finally says, enough. And if you've ever dealt with a Karen like that, tell me in the comments, how would you have handled it? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.